Welcome back, everybody. Episode 60 of the Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. And I am just so grateful today for Joe. So, Joe's stepping in today to share a lot of his personal story of life. His mother was incarcerated when she gave birth to him. He's part of the dynamic avenue of being a police officer in the United States, and even more so a canine handler. He actually won an A&E show with his canine, and he's got this like story. He gets really vulnerable and shares a lot from his heart. What a beautiful, beautiful being that he is. He shares the story of when his adopted parents passed away in a house fire when he was 12 years old. He talks about meeting his mom, like his birth mother, in his early 20s at a family dinner, and all of this dynamic stuff that moved through. Like, it is like a beautiful story how it's weaved together, but there's so many other nuggets inside of this space that I look forward to sharing this episode with you and really feeling the heart of Joe. And, when we talk about reclaiming masculinity and reclaiming that availability to have protection in our life, to hold men in their energetic forms and their capacities and how they lead, Joe represents that as well. Like, he's just such a beautiful being. And I'm just so grateful that I had the opportunity to actually sit with him and chat this through, and that he was so vulnerable in sharing. And I just look forward to hearing about what you guys have to say about this episode. So with no further ado, episode 60, Light Warriors Unleashed podcast. All right, Joe, here we go. This is going to be like I'm going to say exciting. And I use this word often and a lot on the podcast because I actually really am excited. I'm excited to like speak with you. I'm excited for you to share your story. I think there's a lot of power in some of the stuff you're about to share that some people may not even understand what this means to be a human in the world that you've transitioned throughout your lifetime, and like some of the stuff that you've been through in your life. But I think it's just really important for us to kind of share some of this dynamic, because the challenges you've been through and come out of, and where you are in life now, and some of the stuff that you've been through has allowed you to become the man that you are today. And I think it's it's a really cool thing. So start wherever you want to start. Like, I think just maybe tell people kind of who you are a little bit right now coming out of the gate, and then we'll kind of lead into like deeper aspects.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me today. My name is Joe Burns, or Joey Burns, whatever I've been called both. So my legal name is Joe. I'm from Grand Rapids, Minnesota. I was born and raised here. I was raised on a small hobby farm in a rural town just outside of Grand Rapids here. I was raised here, that I grew up kind of bouncing around. And we'll get into kind of the details there later on as to why I was bouncing around, but bounced around for a while. Decided I wanted to go to college for law enforcement. In Minnesota, you do have to have a degree for law enforcement, a college degree. So I went to school for 2 years, got my AAS certificate in law enforcement through Hibbing Community College, which is nationally renowned for law enforcement. Minnesota does have like some of the best known police officers. Obviously, before the whole 2020 thing with George Floyd, we were actually really renowned for sending officers and to different states and being recruited. They would recruit Minnesota officers because of our hard work and dedication to the job. And I went to Hibbing Community College. I graduated there and started in some small towns, part-time policing. And I mean, when I first started over 10 years ago now, I was making $13 an hour part-time.
I love it.
Thought to myself, if I get shot or hurt on the job, it's for 13 bucks an hour, but yeah, it's what I wanted to do. And I knew to get a full-time job, I had to start part-time, and that's just how it was around here. And then in late 2013, I put in for Hibbing Police Department, which is where I currently work. And I got hired March 10th of 2022. March 10th of 2014 is when I got hired with Hibbing Police Department. And I started there as a patrol officer. I had a high interest in doing canine work. Through college, I would do ride-alongs with different canine officers and learned a lot about canine work and canine training, and I would always be the guy in the big suit that would take bites from dogs, and I would always be the guy hiding in the tight spots in the closets and in the vehicles, and laying the tracks through the woods for the dogs to find us. So there was a lot of learning that I did through that, which made me want to become a canine handler, just to see the ability of those animals to be able to track people, find people, apprehend people if need be, find drugs, narcotics. So all that kind of led me to want to become a canine handler in the end run, which in 2018, I was lucky enough to be able to apply through Hibbing Police Department as a canine officer, and I was selected to be the next canine handler. And now I still currently run a canine. His name is Chase. He's 6.5 years old now. And yeah, currently we're in the transition from Hibbing Police Department to our local county, Itasca County Sheriff's Office, to become a deputy in the area that I live in.
That's awesome. And so a couple of the questions I have for you. Does Chase live with you? Like, is he like, because obviously there's a dynamic that moves within an animal. Like, he's not a domesticated dog like you normally would have as a dog pet. He's got some certain standards probably that he moves within to keep his training up to par. But is he with you all the time? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so he's with us all the time. He comes home with me from work.
Yeah.
Well, I get up in the morning. He gets ready with me when I start getting my uniform on. He knows what I'm doing. He gets in the zone. The best part is I have a bulletproof, stab-proof vest for him that was donated by Spike's Canine Fund and Storm in Canada. And when it comes time to we go in the garage to finish getting ready, when we go in the garage, he puts his vest on himself pretty much. I hold it and he steps into it. I just pull it up and zip it up for him.
Oh,
yeah, it's amazing. And so yeah, we go to work, we come home at the end of 12-hour shifts. He comes back home with me, and it's funny because when we're at home, he's a totally different animal than when we're at work. And he is that house pet. He's good with the kids. We have a 6-year-old and a 7-month-old, almost 8-month-old now, and then at home. And he is just so good with those two and protective of those two, protective of my wife. But yet I could have my family over, stuff like that. He's totally fine with them. But yet if we're at home at night and somebody knocks on the door at night, he knows that that's not normal. And so he'll growl all the protective stuff for that. So it's amazing to have that protection at home, but also that bond with the kids that they're able to, I can trust them going and climbing on him and playing with him without him having to become defensive with them.
I love that. And animals are so precious, right? And it just goes to show like how we can be dimensional and how this happens for all of us, that we've got our like, you know, protective work dynamic of who we are. And then we're also the loving, caring being, you know, that natural in humanity, which I think is such a great thing to like visualize and be able to see.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so amazing to see the difference with on the street with him too. When he's in the car, he's ready to go. He's barking at people. He's going crazy. But yet I can take him out at the park at work where there's kids, and he's able to go to the park and be pet by kids, go to a classroom. The kids can line up, single file, come up and pet him one by one, and he's totally fine. And then the next second I could be going, you know, lights and sirens to a call to go send him into a house to get somebody, and he's ready to do what he has to do.
Yeah, so cool. I love it. You mentioned before we started recording that you are releasing him, right? So is he going into a new place or is he staying with you? Like, what does that look like now for your life?
So we are going to Itasca County Sheriff's Office, and they are actually purchasing Chase from my former agency, which is Hibbing Police Department. They are purchasing him for whatever they've agreed upon for him and all of his equipment. The only thing we're not taking is the squad car. They already have one lined up for me, but I'll be bringing him. I'll be bringing his body armor, his leashes, his muzzles, his all of his training equipment. All that stuff will be coming with me to the Itasca County Sheriff's Office, and I'll become one of their new canine handlers.
So you still keep him. So he's yours.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, my heart's going to hurt for Chase if he has to let you go too. But see, do you need to get them till life's end? Like when they're done, they're done. Like, do they stay with you the whole time?
Yeah, he stays with me the whole time. If he wouldn't have been included in the deal to come over here, I wouldn't have done it because I would have just waited till he retired from Hibbing. But since they were, because that was my plan, was to get back over here, but since they were offering to purchase him sooner to get me over here, I was all on board with it. That was the deciding factor right there. But yeah, once he retires at whatever age is determined, it's kind of up in the air.
Mm.
Because these dogs, they love to work. That's all they live for, is to come to work with us. That's what they're used to. So my biggest thing is, I don't like the thought of retiring him early, because people always say, well, I want to retire him early so he can relax at home. That's not what they want.
No.
You know, they want to keep going as long as they can and keep doing their job. So my goal is to keep going with him until I can see that he's starting to slow down a little bit, having some hard times with things. Then I'll start to wean him off to get him to relax at home while we look to get another dog in the future.
Right.
But yeah,
And well, I think that's a good representation of us as humans too. Like, I don't, like they tell us that we have to retire by a certain age. And there's a lot of people out there that actually, don't even desire that their mission or their purpose in life is to go to work. And then you take that away from them. And it's almost like they die this slow death of like no purpose, right? It's the same thing.
I see that in a lot of law enforcement. It seems like once a lot of cops retire,
Mm.
they don't live much longer, and that's a lot of it's because I think that's what they love to do, and they love to go to work, and once they're out of work, they don't know what to do with
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. I can imagine that to be a thing for sure. I want
Yeah,
to rewind. Sorry, go ahead. What were you just about to say?
once he retires, I'll be able to buy him from the sheriff's office. Usually what they do, because he's technically property of the city or the county,
Got it.
they'll charge $1 to buy him from them, just because they know that they wouldn't make it unreasonable for me to be able to purchase him because of the bond that we have. So I would buy him for $1 or something like that, and then I would become responsible, obviously, for like his vet bills and stuff like that. So everything from there he'd become our house pet at that point. So it's the kids will love it.
I
They're
think
already
he'd still
super.
be working no matter what.
Yeah, but he still acts like he's a puppy. So
Oh, I love that. I love animals so much. Like, I don't have any currently that I take care of or own. We'll say I'm right now house sitting for a friend who's in Mexico and dog sitting her dog who I love and adore. But Costa Rica is a whole other vibe. Like, there's strays everywhere. And I will one day have a cat sanctuary, I call it, because I want them to have like a home. Like, I'm gonna have this big, massive property, and I'm gonna like build like all different kinds of stuff in it. And the cats can come and live on the property and be safe and fed and have friends and play and like do all the things. That's coming. I know it's coming in my future, but yeah, I love animals so much. So good. Okay, let's rewind. I want to go back to before you were born. Okay, because I think this is like an important story, because I feel that some of the stuff that happened to you as a very young child shaped your life moving forward as to some of the decisions you made. Would that be a correct assumption?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So tell us a story about your mom and about the journey of you coming into this earth and anything else that you desire to share in connection with that. I'd love to hear it.
So I came to find out that I was adopted at birth, and I
Mm.
didn't know this until I was probably about 10 years old. Um, and I don't remember how that conversation came about. I think I know that my brothers were older than me, quite a ways older than me. I'm 34 right now. My brothers right now are all in their 50s.
Wow.
So yeah, there's an age gap there, and I always wondered why there was such an age gap. And I think that was the conversation that had been brought up to my parents, was why is everybody so much older than me? Because obviously my parents then were 20 years older than that, or so, 20 some years older than my brothers. So um they had informed me that I was adopted at birth, and that was about it. They didn't really go into detail anything about my biological parents, and I found more information out later about them. But when I was born, I was adopted, and I was adopted because I was born in the jail system. My mom was currently incarcerated at the time for a motor vehicle theft, from my understanding, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Talked to her directly about that. I've just heard from other people, but including my biological dad, who I found out who he was later. But she was incarcerated for a motor vehicle theft that had occurred, and she was caught with the vehicle and was spending time in jail. And she was, obviously quite a ways pregnant with me at the time, and she had been sentenced to whatever time she was serving, and I was born there. They obviously transported to the hospital to get me born, for the birth, and then afterwards brought me back. But I was adopted into my family. So it had been my great aunt and uncle that adopted me while my mom saw him.
Interesting. And then like how do you like as a 10-year-old, learning that you were adopted? Obviously you didn't know the dynamics of all of that. Growing up with that around, like I'm like you had a great childhood, I'm sure. Like you had brothers, all that dynamic. So you were in a family unit as you started to grow up in age. How did that transition for you? Like how did you find out about your mom? How did you feel about that? How did that come through for you? Like I just love to like hear more. Yeah.
Once I found out I was adopted, I don't remember how the conversation went after that. I was about 10, but I do remember that nothing really changed after that. I think they kind of told me that my mom was, a bad, was not in a good place.
Yeah.
And that she was into drugs. She was making bad choices in life. And that's why they don't associate with her. That's why I was adopted to them. And then rewind later on in life, it wasn't until I was in my 20s when I asked my uncle about my biological parents more, and my aunt and uncle knew because that was their niece, was my biological.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you stayed in the family.
Yeah, and they had mentioned something because it was actually it was Thanksgiving. I was at my aunt and uncle's house, and I don't remember what year it was. I think it was like 2012 or 2013, around there, when I was in college for law enforcement. And they'd actually told me, hey, just so you know, your mom is coming to this holiday thing. They go, it's not, if you don't want to be here or if you don't want her here, we understand. Just let us know. But she's coming, plan to come. And so I'm just like, well, I've never met her.
Oh my God.
And so she ended up coming to this thing, and I was there, and it was quite an awkward experience, just on the fact that, it'd have been fine if she would have made it fine, but she's the one that kind of made things awkward. She pulled me aside right away and kind of like apologized for everything, and I'm just like, giving nothing to apologize for it, that because I don't really know who you are. I don't know much about you. I just know that I've heard things about you, but yeah, she kind of made things a little awkward there, and ended up adding me on social media stuff, and following me on there and stuff after that. But you could tell that she's a different type of person. You could tell like the drugs affected her as she used a lot of younger. And I kind of told my brothers about what had happened, and they kind of filled me in on a little more of her backstory, and the fact that, like, the stuff that she did when she was younger, and why they kept me away from her. And so it's interesting to hear the two sides to the story on that. But I also, I asked her if she knew who my biological dad was, and she had no idea. She was partying at the time, and drinking and doing drugs and all this stuff, 30 some years ago. And she had no clue who he was at the time. I was an oops baby. She was seeing somebody else in a serious relationship, if not married to the person. I don't know the story there, but she was with somebody at the time and had cheated on them with somebody else, and that's where I came along.
So she doesn't. Interesting. Yeah, how the whole thing plays out. Yeah, just so you're in this room and like, and it's kind of cool that you stayed within the family line. Like you weren't adopted out into like another family that wasn't attached. So it creates a whole other dynamic though, of like, all of a sudden you're in this choice of like, hey, your mom's invited to dinner. Are you cool with it? And you're like, what do you say to that? Like, like I can only imagine what the things going on. And you're probably a little bit more impartial because you're like, I don't really know her. Like, it doesn't matter to me really, because this is my jam. This is my family. This is what I grew up in. These are my people. But yeah, like, how did you feel after that whole thing? Like,
like, you don't know what you don't know. And that was my biggest, like, I would like to see firsthand and experience firsthand what she's like. And that's exactly how I am as a person. I try not to judge anybody before I meet them firsthand, before I know the facts. And that's kind of the big thing I wanted to see, was who she was as a person, what she was like. And that little experience that I did have with her at that time it was a lot to take in, and it kind of gave me a good judgment of where she sits with things. And even at that time, at 20 some years old, I was a pretty good judge of character. I'm not, I'm 20 some years old, still have a lot of learning to do in life, but just seeing that and getting that vibe that she was throwing off, it just kind of, something didn't sit right. And so from there, we finished our dinner, we did our thing. I didn't really try to avoid her, but I tried to kind of converse with other family members that I knew better at the time. And in the family, there was an investigator for a different agency. He worked for the county that I was applying for in Hibbing. Okay. And so I would sit and talk to him and kind of learn police stuff from him and hear his stories and that kind of thing. So that's what I did the rest of that time.
Yeah, and like I want to complete kind of the loop of this conversation on your mom, and then I want to go back to like the actual law enforcement and like what drove you to be a part of that institution. But so this dinner finished, you guys parted ways. She started following you on social media. Did anything, like, obviously it's probably like 10, 14 years later, did anything move through in that type of relationship? Like, where are you at right now with your mom? Like, how does it feel? Like, what does this look like for you?
So the relationship now, we don't associate at all. I ended up figuring out about 2 or 3 years ago who my biological dad was, and that was through 23andMe, the DNA. Okay. The DNA testing that they do. Yeah. And it's an application on your phone or computer. And I can't remember if I sent buccal swabs in or blood. I can't remember. It was one of the two. But you send them in and they tell you on this app who your relatives are that have done the application to the same thing. Yeah. And I came to this first cousin that was in Texas, and so I ended up messaging her saying, "Hey, I see we're related on here," and I'm like, "By the way, do you know who the might be my dad?" Pretty much, like, yeah. And she did some digging, and she's like, "Well, I don't really know him, but I know that of this Chris guy that's in Minnesota that might be your dad." And she gave me the name, and I looked him up, and I ended up figuring out that there's, a very good chance that this is him. So we ended up calling him, and his girlfriend answered the phone at the time. Yeah. And she's like, "Hey," that was the only number we had. And we're like, "Hey, is Chris there?" And she's like, "No, can I ask who's calling?" And it's like, "Uh-oh, what do you say?" So we ended up like, "Hey, just so you know, this is what happened, and this is who I am, and can you let Chris know?" Because he was working at the time. And she was speechless, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is cool. How do you and he ended up calling me a short time after that, and like that night, just right after that, and like, "I can't believe you're alive. I didn't know you were alive," because some of the stuff I came to find out was during the pregnancy, once she found out she was going to jail, she tried to get an abortion and pretty much get rid of me. And I mean, to the point of, it sounds like she used clothes hangers and everything to like force it.
That's intense too. Like, I can only imagine someone doing that. Yeah.
And like, she would consume copious amounts of drugs to try and get rid of me. Wow. So, I mean, it was intense, and it was crazy because she was a couple years older than him when she got pregnant. He was 17 at the time, and back then, like, no, because he wasn't even 18 years old yet. He didn't know what to think, and his parents both their parents were still involved in things, and their parents pretty much separated them. And after the whole vehicle thing came about, his parents took him away because she was bad news. Yeah. And that was the last he ever knew of me, was the fact that she was trying to get an abortion, and she was going to jail for a while, and that was it.
No kidding. So how's that relationship for you? Do you speak to him?
I do. I get a hold of him here and there. He more or less reaches out to me, just checking in on things, checking in on the kid. Yeah, it's been very nice. He's not he's not a man that's crazy successful, stuff like this. He's a hardworking man that lives an hour and a half from me, that he's had a rough life too, but he's trying to make an honest living. Yeah. He doesn't get into trouble. It's funny because I know the Bemidji cops over there, and they'll call me all the time. Go, hey, I just saw your dad. He's stumbling home from the bar, and they're like, he's, they love him there because he's never in trouble. He just,
Yeah.
he gets with the law enforcement. He likes to drink after work and
Yep.
go. Yeah, so they'll give me a hard time about it. They like him over there, and yeah, he'll reach out, check in on us, check in on the family. He'll send Christmas cards, and I'll reach out to him here or there, tell him happy birthday or Merry Christmas. And it's not the best relationship, but you know what? I went into it. I more or less looked to figure out who he was for health reasons, to figure out my chances of diabetes with him, with the family, heart issues, stuff like that, just to kind of reach out and see what they have. And I got that, and then more. I wasn't looking for anything else, but it's a little more, and I'm totally happy with that.
It's an interesting story, and I don't think that you're unique in this, Joe. Like, I think that and I've watched this happen. Like, I used to have a client of mine whose daughter went through some drug stuff, and she ended up adopting her daughter's child, who's technically her grandkid, and raising her as almost like her child. And it's like, this story is actually more common, I think, than we actually recognize and know. And not, I'm Canadian, so I didn't see it a lot up in Canada this way, but I think in the US this is something that is more of a dominant conversation, that people are getting involved in a lot of drugs and alcohol, and then all of a sudden they have the baby, and family members step in to help raise the baby. And all of this is just like, I don't know what you're seeing, like in the work that you do, through the mechanism of what you go through all the time, but I think this is a really big thing.
I was just going to mention that through my line of work, I do see it quite a bit. I don't know how many of the kids actually get adopted by the grandparents, but I do see grandparents taking over a lot and raising the kids. And I don't know to what extent they raise them, if they adopt them or if they just help the parents. But I do see a lot of the drug use where the grandkids are with the parents, either because the parents chose to let them go with grandparents, or because the court system made them. But we do see it quite a bit. And yeah, I can relate to it. It's just, I can relate it at a different age. Obviously, they're kids now. So, I can't be like, I was there, but at the same time, I can empathize. It can be empathetic towards them, and I can know what they're going through.
Well, and yeah, you probably didn't really even recognize it at 8 until age 10, where you heard you were adopted, and then you just kept moving on with life, like you just kept doing your thing, where some of these kids are with their parents and then get moved. So they actually have memories of that whole entire process. And like, for you, inside of your own space and your growth and your movement, let's say, in life, did this leave an imprint in you? Like, was there stuff that you had to work through in your own life to like kind of get over this, or is most of the trauma that you've been working through related to the career stuff, which we're about to get into?
Yeah, I would say most of the traumas with the career stuff, and there's more with my adoptive parents that have happened. They're no longer with us anymore, but most of the trauma, I'd say, is with that. As far as my biological parents go, the only thing that moving forward I look forward to is, being an amazing dad for my kids, and being there as much as I can, and being in the moment with them, and helping them grow, and kind of letting them have somebody there. And that's kind of like my biggest thing is, knowing that they weren't there for me, I can be there for them.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So let's go into that, because I think this is an important thing. Like, you didn't know at the time when you were driving towards, let's say, becoming, I don't know, can I just say it, a cop? Becoming a cop. I don't know if that's the real word. Like, I don't know if that's like a slang word that I call it, but like what drove you to that? Like, where in your mind did that come through, that you were like, this is what I want to do? And then obviously it grew into the canine sector, and now that's where you kind of lead. And I could tell by your heart that you're like, love that work, especially hanging out with Chase all the time, and you guys like, doing it together. But yeah, like, tell me about the story of like how this started for you.
Yeah. So in 2002, well, actually, I'll go back. Our family, the family I was raised into, my adoptive dad, my dad was a Marine.
Okay.
My brother was a Marine. My cousin was a Marine. They were all Marines.
Mm.
Um, and that was my goal, was to go into the military.
Mm.
And then in 2002, February 10th, 2002, my parents passed away in a house fire, along with my niece. So I was at a friend's house. Otherwise, I would have been there as well. But I was at a friend's house at the time. It was February. We were going to go ice fishing with my buddy's dad. So we had plans to do that all the next day, and that got canceled. We got a call early in the morning that morning, saying something had happened. We have to go meet my family in Bovee it was. And we arrived there, and my brother ended up telling me that mom and dad passed away in a house fire, and that my 7-year-old niece was there as well, and that nobody survived from the house. So
Oh
she
my
was there.
God.
So
Wow, like that's definitely intense. So then your aunt and uncle took you in after that. Is that how that worked?
no, my one of my brothers did.
Okay, because he was old enough.
3 older brothers and one of my brothers did at the time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So like hearing this, obviously, like I can only imagine the pain that someone goes through with losing, like, because they were your parents, like whether they adopted you or not, they like you grew up with, that's who they were for you.
They were amazing people, and it was an amazing time in my life. And it's like at that age, at 12, you're just getting to really, I mean, obviously as a baby and growing up, you get to know somebody, but you're really getting to know them as a teenager. Teenage years are hard already as it is.
Mhm.
And going through that, I can honestly say that my sixth, seventh grade years are kind of blank, because it was just total adaptation to a different lifestyle with my brother. And I'm thankful that he took me in, but there were times, me and him would argue and fight, and it was totally different living environment than with my parents, mainly
Yeah.
because one, he lives a totally different lifestyle than my parents did. Two, I was a teenager, and we all know how teenagers can be. So
And
yeah,
did
so it was a different lifestyle to be raised in, but yeah, that's where I kind of went after that.
well, and also too, like not really knowing about your birth mother at the time, um, who was into drugs and stuff, did you ever find yourself reaching out for substances through these teenage years as you were rediscovering this new pathway?
No, thankfully I never did. I tried marijuana once in ninth grade, and we got caught, and I was grounded for a month, and I never tried it again.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, as far as like even cigarettes, I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never, I've chewing tobacco maybe 4 or 5 times. And then I realized I didn't like it, so I quit doing it. And as far as any other drugs, yeah, I've never touched anything, and thankfully not alcohol. I've drank alcohol, and I'll still have an alcoholic beverage here and there, but it's like now that I met my wife and have my kids here, I have zero interest in going out and consuming copious amounts of alcohol. So
Yeah. I think we get over it to some degree. We'll say, like those of us that are like, okay, yeah, we're done with this age. Like I've had my obviously fair share of stories that I could speak out loud, and some of them definitely that you're not proud of, like, but I think it's like one of those things that you move through. But it's amazing to see because with such a trauma like induced event, and all of your life changing and shifting, how you didn't lean into that, which I think is a really beautiful thing, actually.
would say I think that music was my main thing that got me through at the time, because I know that I was very left brain sided, and I'm very artistic on that side of the music and the lyrics. And I know that that's kind of the big thing that got me through those years was music at the time.
Yeah, I
I
love
don't
that.
I can explain what it was about it, but even to this day, I still love music. It's just I don't have the time to divulge in it like I did used to as a teenager. But I used to know thousands of songs, the lyrics to songs, and it was the thing that kind of kept me going.
Well, I think that like music is one of those beautiful things too that connects us so much deeper into things. Like we can express ourselves through music, right? So when you come home and a certain song's playing, you know what kind of mood that person is in based on the music they're listening to, right? So it's like one of those things that it does have a healing capacity, and sound frequency is actually in the world I play in is actually a movement of energy. So we can heal our bodies through sound. So I'm not surprised that you leaned into music, going through all of that. So cool.
Yeah. So that's how I kind of got through my teenage years, and then
So
yeah,
like the
once I
whole
was,
police officer thing, where did it drop in? Obviously the fire happened, Marine family. There was some kind of movement in there.
yeah. So what I actually did sign up to go to the Marines after I was 18. Me and a buddy signed up, and we were all ready to go. I mean, we had everything. We had our bags packed and everything. And the day that we were supposed to go, I got cold feet, and
Mm.
I ended up not going. And I called him, and he pretty much said that's good because I wasn't going either, type thing. Each other, and I'm glad. I'm glad. I wish I to this day. There's still parts of me that wished I would have gone, and there's still parts of me that think I still can, but I know my body tells me no nowadays.
Yeah. I have
Used to back.
a client of mine whose son's literally in Marines, just finishing up his basic training. I guess it's what it's called. I don't know all the specifics, but he's about to do, I guess it's like, what is it called? The catalyst or catapult, or it's like the
Oh yeah,
72 hours or 48 hour, whatever it is thing.
kind of like their hell week. It's their last little hurrah before they pass boot camp or basic training.
Yeah. And it's like intense where they maybe sleep 6 to 8 hours in that whole time span, and it's super physically exhausting and stuff. So she's gearing, I think it's coming up this next weekend. So she's gearing up emotionally to hold space for her son, who she doesn't obviously, she won't be in contact with. But like as a mother, I can only imagine what that feels like and is for her.
Best of luck to them. I
Yeah.
tell you what, thankful for our military services, and I mean it's amazing that we have such a good like our community we live in is very thankful for our military veterans and our current active military, and it's very very awesome to be able to I witnessed firsthand in a restaurant not too long ago actually that somebody paid for one of our veterans meals when we were there, and it's great. It's good to be thankful for people like that in our communities.
Well, and if we
So
think about it too, like what they go through to actually be a soldier or a marine, or like in the like all of it, like the physical exhaustion on their bodies, what they take on in their mind, like I can only imagine what it feels like to go to war, like how that is on your brain.
yeah, and I mean not only that, but this their sacrifice of not being with their families and not being with the people they love to go over and pretty much train to handle what they need to.
Yeah. And I actually really feel some of it's sad because what we're seeing right now happening in Israel, and what has happened throughout the years as this human experience moves through, is that there's people out there that are staging stuff like this, and then all of these other people, like even the military in the US, go out to help defend, and we're losing people's lives over something that didn't need to happen, and it's a really sad thing too.
I can say that I won't be the first. I won't be the person that claims to know the whole Gaza Strip, and I don't know the whole backstory to it. I've done some reading and research on it, but I know a little bit. But it's crazy to me to think of how these terrorists act and what they do to people. It makes me so, and I'm not the only one, but makes me so heated on the inside and so frustrated. Times like that and seeing that on the news are things that make me wish that I was still in there to be able to go over and give those guys what they deserve. And that's the thing that, you know, that's a little bit of the regret I have by not going and seeing stuff like that happen.
Mm,
I know
yeah.
that I wasn't there for a reason. I didn't, everything happens for a reason. So
Well, and also too, like, we're in a coaching group together, obviously, and you know how Sean always says to us, like, get your house in order. It's like your power is in that house, right? Is in the stance of that family unit coming together and that unity, and you guys making whatever bold move as a unit together to protect the people in your community, to protect your own space, to move that through. So if something does move through, you guys are solid in that. So that's almost like you're, let's say, giving into the world in a different way. And although maybe it may be like you're like, oh my God, I wish I could go over there and help these guys out to be able to, like, tear some shit up. But it's like it's like you're meant to obviously create a solitude in your own home, you know?
Be in the way the whole time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's so funny. So yeah, so you failed at being a Marine. You backed out last minute. Then what happened?
One of the things was is I did feel pretty bad about backing out, and or I did spend a couple of years thinking about things, and I did miscellaneous jobs throughout the next couple of years after that, and kind of kept crossing my head, that I backed out and didn't do it, and I was thinking of how else I could serve, and one of the biggest things was how I could serve locally would be law enforcement, and um, I did know that one of my family members was in law enforcement. It was my great grandpa. He was no longer around. Um, Never got to know him, but he served for the community that we live in still, and he was a constable at the time. I wasn't even a police officer then. I was, that's how long ago it was. But he served for the local agency here, and that kind of was a big push. Trying to figure out how I can do it locally, and I can still serve my community and serve, depending on where I worked, my country, I could, if you went federal or something like that. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. I hadn't done any ride-alongs with any canines. I haven't gotten to know any police officers or deputies or troopers at the time. I just knew I wanted to do something in law enforcement based where I could help out still.
Right. And then obviously you stepped into that, started maneuvering through. What are some key takeaways? Like, I want to talk about like you winning the TV show and stuff that's coming up, but like, what are some key takeaways being, in law enforcement, being in this, dynamic environment that you've seen over the years,
Say the hardest part is obviously what you see and do. The hardest part with me is anything to do with kids is the hardest part. Whether they have the bad home, they're raised in a bad home, they had, car accidents. The worst call I can think of that I was ever on was a house fire in 2017. Obviously because my parents had passed away in a house fire. But we fire on Christmas Eve in I think it was 2017. So I go there, and obviously I respond to house fires a lot different. I obviously go pretty much balls to the wall as fast as I can get there, just because I know what it's like to lose people. So I get there, and there's a kid standing outside with like pretty much no clothes on, and it was 20 below outside Fahrenheit, and I remember putting him in my squad car, and the house was fully engulfed. Come to find out, long story short, there were 3 grandkids in the house and the grandparents. The grandpa was a retired firefighter, threw one of the grandkids out of the house, went back in to get the rest, and never came out. And nobody else ended up surviving that house fire. Fire department got there, they pulled everybody out. Me and my partner did CPR on the kids for like 20 or 30 minutes before an ambulance got there, in 20 below weather. And they ended up pretty much jump starting their hearts back with medicine type, their chances of them surviving were slim to none, and they didn't survive. The 2 kids didn't, but the one grandkid did. So my whole career up until about 6 months ago, my whole career that was my toughest call that I've ever been on. The thing that's kind of helped me through that one was I started actually going to therapy and doing EMDR therapy, and that's actually helped me through that. And the whole thing of in my head, I'd always drive by that scene, and I'd always see the fire in my head, and I could even picture hearing the flames and everything that night. And I'd always picture like what went wrong, why didn't we save the kids? And the biggest thing that takeaway that I learned through the therapy is, you're always focused on the negative. And my therapist always say, focus on the positive of what went right. There's still there's one kid that's alive because of what we did. There's one kid, we did the best we could as far as first aid and rendering first aid to these kids and the grandparents that we could to survive, make them survive. We did the best we could. We were as trained as we could be to handle a situation like this. So the biggest thing I learned there was, what went right. Instead of being critical on what went wrong and what we can do better next time, focus on the positives of it. And, it was a horrible, horrible situation. And I never want to have to do it again. I know I might have to in this career, but, I don't ever wish that upon anybody and I don't want that to happen. But now I've got a different perspective on it.
Yeah, well, I think like, firefighters, police officers, and even obviously we can talk about the military. Like it's just like you see these dynamics, like you see these things, and part of your job is actually to manage them. And that takes a lot off of a person.
Yeah, and it does mentally, physically, emotionally. I've got a different type of mindset when it comes to all this stuff. I can, I think, and I don't know if it's because of how I was raised. I don't know if it's because of what I went through. But I can go through different calls and handle them differently than a lot of people. And I don't know, I can't answer as to why, but I seem to be able to handle everything fairly well and not have to rely on resorting to drinking or a lot of people handle things differently, and it's amazing to see how some people can't handle certain things. And I don't, I can't say what in the person's mind makes them be able to handle a situation or not, but I know that through this job with Itasca County, I have to do a psychological test.
Mhm.
And a psychologist and talk to him for an hour or so about my life. And I talked to him for a while, and we discussed all the same things we're discussing now.
Yeah.
And he pretty much went on about accumulative stress and how a person can only handle so much before they snap. And I'm like, oh no, no, no.
Are you about to let go, Joe?
No, I'm like, no, it was and then I ended up talking to him and I said, no, I go to therapy still, and I talk to somebody when I need to, that's kind of where, I started going and I was every week, and then now it's pretty much to the point where if something happens and it's bugging me, I'll call up and say, hey, I need to have a meeting, and we'll go talk it over. But um I'm mainly going now for preventative, to prevent the PTSD in the future, because I know how prevalent it is in law enforcement and first responders, military, stuff like that. So I'm trying to get ahead of things in the future that way and hopefully be a better person that way.
Yeah, and I love that you bring that forward, because I've been really speaking to and feeling out like over probably the last year about personal responsibility, right? And about us really taking responsibility for the dynamics of our life. So you reaching out and making a call and going, I'm feeling something, I need some help. It's like that's still, there's so much power in that. And I think a lot of us and a lot of people out there right now are scared to do that. They're actually scared to do the work, or what will people think, or all the bullshit that we keep saying to ourselves as to why we can't, when it's in these movements and in these calls that we make to say, I don't know, that we literally unfizzle it all. And then we can actually start to heal and move through and actually become the humans that we're meant to be and actually live the lives that we desire to have.
Yeah, the reason I actually started going to therapy was because my wife noticed that when our baby boy Kemper, when he was little, like infant,
Mhm.
uh, he would either scream out of nowhere, babies just randomly, ah, and that, or something would fall, like a cup or something would fall and make a loud noise. I would have a exaggerated startle response and I would get angry about it.
Mm.
Uh, and she noticed that right away, and she pretty much was the one that said, you need to go talk to somebody about that, because it's, and um, people handle that differently. I know people, when people say people are messed up or have something wrong with them, they get upset about it. And, I kind of already knew, like, that's probably a good thing, especially with this career and everything. So I ended up calling and getting somebody lined up and, being able to do it. And that's my biggest thing is, as the coaching group with Sean, step out of your comfort zone. And that was a big thing, was being vulnerable enough to go talk to somebody. So
It's a powerful thing. Like we all have our stuff. We all do. Like every person is dealing with something that they're working through. Like we'll never be perfect. We're on a journey here on this earth experience to move through stuff, right? And it's like, but it's our responsibility to start to move it through, to not be sitting in the dynamics of it, to actually get the healing done, to not let it escalate, to not just turn to alcohol and drugs to diminish that so that we could live another day. It's like, how do we actually move it through our field and actually start to take that action? So it's a powerful thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah. So let's talk about, because I think this is really fun. So was it Chase that went on the TV show with you, or did you have another dog with you on the
Yeah, that
show?
was Chase. Actually, speaking of Chase, he's coming to check on me.
Yeah, let's say hi to Chase. Bring him on. Hi, Chase.
Up, up.
Oh, hi, buddy. Oh, such a good boy. I love him. Hi. He's like looking at the camera too. It's like he like knows. You didn't say hello? Say hello. So fun. Oh my God. So good. He's such a great spirit. I could totally feel him. Everything for me is energy, right?
So Chase went on the show with me.
Tell everybody about
and
the
it,
show. So it'll be in the
yeah,
bio and I'll do it in the intro, but like tell everybody about the show. How did it come about?
so when my wife and I we were dating at the time, they had a show on A&E called America's Top Dog, and what it was is like American Ninja Warrior for dogs, and it was a obstacle course pretty much where you and your canine or partner went. Not all of them were police dogs, but first season I think they had what was it, 5 dogs per episode, 4 of them police dogs and 1 civilian dog, which they called the underdog. They have to do things like the first one they called the canine combine. So pretty much an obstacle course that they went through for time. The fastest ones from that group went on to the next one, which was a scent detection course, looking for whatever scent they're trained in. Our dogs are trained in narcotics. Some dogs are trained in like lavender oils. They do like a sporting for different scents. And then so they'd go through that, the fastest dogs, and they would move on to the final round, which was the dog house, and they'd have different things. And at the end, they'd have a bite scenario with a decoy in the big suit. And so I was watching, I go, gosh, that'd be so cool to be able to do something like that. And of course, you know, if you won, you got prize money, stuff like that. But we're scrolling through social media one night, just me and my wife are sitting there, and she's looking through, I think, Instagram or one of them, and she saw a casting for season 2 of America's Top Dog. So we're like, oh, cool. I wonder if we should put in for it. And I talked to my chief, and he's like, yeah, go for it. You know, you'll never get it, but go for it, type thing. And I worked a night shift. I got done at like 6 in the morning. And then I remember at 8 in the morning or something like that, where it was 8 or 9 in the morning, and I had a phone call from New York. And usually they're telemarketers, so I just ignore them.
Yeah.
I was super tired and decided to answer it. And it was actually a producer from the show wanting to do an interview over the phone, kind of discuss and hear about kind of my life and my dog and go on from there. And I'm like, no way. So talking to them, and next thing you know, they wanted to do a Zoom meeting so they could see me and see the dog and kind of go over more stuff in person, like as far as in person as they could. And
Yeah.
so we did that, and I ended up we got informed that we got selected for the show, and I had to tell my chief, like, hey, you know, we're going to California. I'm bringing the dog with, because he's a bite dog too. He'll be, you know, he apprehends bad guys, so it's like I gotta bring the dog to California. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he was all on board with it. I told, you know, as far as we knew, we were only going there for 3 or 4 days, is what we were told. We ended up being there for over 2 weeks because of COVID. It was in the COVID, so everything was shut down. Everybody had to wear masks. They also had a strike with the production crew because of they had something going on with wages or health benefits or something, where they had like a 2-day strike and they got it settled. And so it ended up being about 2 weeks. But so we got to go to California. We flew out there. Me and my my wife, we flew out there. What they did is they allowed us to like walk through the course one time with our dog to kind of show the dog the stuff. So they didn't like go there and like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff.
Yeah.
So they allowed us to walk through the course with the dog. So they kind of saw everything and see, you know, was able to hear the noises and all that. While he was going through the course, he ended up slicing his paw on a piece of plexiglass on the set. And I mean, there was blood all over. So we had to go to the emergency vet down there in Simi Valley, and they ended up pretty much saying no go for the show. You have to let it heal. It was so bad. He had a slice, and I think it was 2 punctures from something like screws that were sticking through or something that they missed. And so of course, so we had to put him on the sideline, and we weren't able to compete for the longest time until it healed. And they're like, the casting crew was pretty much like, you're on the back burner for now. as a backup. Unless something happens, you won't be on the show. Well, there were really, really bad fires out there,
Mm.
wildfires. And somebody, I want to say they were from Washington or Oregon, they weren't able to make it because they had to go back home to help with the fires out there, which is totally understandable.
Of course.
Um, and so that last day of filming, they said, hey, this person has to go back home and get their house in order and make sure that they're going to have a house by the end of this. So you're going to be back on, but you have to get cleared by the vet. So we ended up seeing the vet on in the staging area type thing, and they came up and they're pretty much like, well, it's healed over, but if you want to, you can, but you might want to let it heal. And it's pretty much like, well, we're here, we're gonna do this type stuff. As long as you're not saying no, we're good to go.
Yeah.
So we ended up running the episode, and we won our episode that night. They filmed at night because it was so hot during the day. And so we filmed at night. It was like 50 degrees, which is like beautiful Minnesota weather.
Yeah.
And so I in California over there that lived over there was wearing full jackets and everything at night.
I know. It's so funny to watch. I
Oh.
know. I lived in the desert in California, like in Palm Desert for a while in 2018. And like I'm Canadian, right? And they're like, it's so cold here. I was like, this isn't cold. Like you don't and like I grew up in Winnipeg. So like we used to go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, like on road trips. Like that would be like the fun road trip, right? Because we'd come to the mall, like and have a great time there. So I get and understand the dynamics of the weather you deal with, let's just say.
That's our element. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is beautiful. And yeah, we won our episode. We won 10 grand that night for our canine program, and then 5 grand for the animal shelter at home.
Mm.
A couple nights later, we had the finale because they had to film a couple more episodes. I think another episode maybe. But the next night or two, we had the finale where it was all the winners from each episode compete against each other for the final top dog. And we ended up winning the whole thing and then setting the course record that night. It was a lot of fun, and we ended up winning another 20 grand for our canine program and another 5 grand for the animal shelter. So the animal shelter got 10 grand to help out with whatever needs they needed at the time, and our canine program received $30,000 to continue it with being successful and go to trainings and equipment and anything like that we needed. And it was an experience that I'll never forget. I do remember the runs, like actually running the event was kind of a blur because I was so nervous about like tripping and falling on national TV and all that. But I do know that I made a lot of networks with friends that I still talk to these people all the time. I'll reach out, hey, how are you guys doing? And we'll talk stories about how our dogs, I set my dog on this call and I set my dog on this call. And, it's awesome to have those kind of networks with people from around the country. I know people from the East Coast to the West Coast now and North and South. And so.
Yeah. Well, it's fun when we like, and I really believe in living in experiences, right? And I think that a lot of the time we wouldn't do stuff like this, or we would be, oh, well, I don't have to, or I'm scared to step in, or whatever the mechanism is that's moving through us. But it's in these experiences that we get to meet people, that we get to push the boundary, that we get to have more courage, or, we get to see what we're really made of. And I think that the more we can do this in all different dimensions of our life, the more we can understand about who we actually really are.
Absolutely. And it's amazing too with some of the networks I made. There was another couple from Moorhead, which is about 3 hours from here, and by North Dakota. And I know we had a missing person where the couple from Moorhead, they had a search and rescue dog, a cadaver dog that helped find deceased bodies. And our missing person was believed to be deceased. He was a suicidal male who disappeared, and we weren't able to find him. So I ended up calling them, and they were getting ready to head on over with their dog because that's what they were for. And it's like, it's able to be able to reach out to people. And like you said, they were valuable to me at the time. I was able to be like, hey, we need you here. Are you able to come? Oh, absolutely. We're not too far away. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool to be able to have that resource available when you need, and vice versa. If they need something from us, we're more than happy to go train with them and help out. And
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think that that's what it's all about. Is I think that once we get out of our own way and we start to like really step in and be open to other people, to different communities, to like expansion. Things like this happen where we make friends all over the place, that people, we can rely on people, we can reach out to people, we can do all of that, right? So
100%. I agree. I agree.
yeah. Well, you've had an interesting journey over the last, time period of your life, 34 years, right?
Yeah.
So what's next? Like, where do you feel is like leading you next? And yeah, and then we'll close out because I have one more question for you. But yeah.
Um, so I know I'm seeking employment with the sheriff's office here. I start, oh boy, the 23rd of this month. So in about a week and a half, I start with them.
Mhm.
Um, as far as my life and my career go, I know I'm always, ever since I joined the Den and I rejoined the Lions Den, that coaching group that we're part of, I joined that to kind of expand and kind of reach out and look into things, because I know that with the career of law enforcement, it's kind of a roller coaster. We go through waves and with everything and how political it can be. There, I'm always looking for that. Is there something else I could be doing to help people? Is there something else I could be doing to better my family and myself?
Mhm.
So I rejoined the Lions Den, or the group, for that reason, was to kind of expand my horizon and see if there's anything that I can look into to help better myself. I know that's a lot of what I know as law enforcement, just because I've done it, and I've put myself into it so hard these last 10 years that I've become very proficient at my career. But sadly, that's a lot of what I know now as law enforcement in the same case. So it's like, it's been amazing to do this, because I met people in the insurance business who have, hey, do this. Well, what I did is, I ended up going and buying a course through insurance, and I was able to learn so much about life insurance. And I realized that my life insurance plan isn't the best life insurance plan that I have. So I
Yeah.
was able to do that. It's something that I found out that I don't think that I would be good at, selling insurance, but it's something that I was able to learn about it and learn how many different types of insurance there are through my career. And it's just like, there are so many types of life insurance that it's unreal, actually, how many different varieties there are. So it was kind of neat learning stuff like that, and hear other people's story and what they do. And that's kind of where I'm at. Is I'm driven still to do law enforcement. I'm driven still to do my canine. Um, and that's the best part. Is I love canine. I love helping people. I love finding people. The best part is, what is it? Ernest Hemingway always said, "There is no hunting like the hunting of man." And that's kind of our canine saying, as canine handlers. And there's nothing more truthful. And whether it be a bad guy that we're tracking or a missing person, my most successful story with Chase, is we found a 14-year-old who ran away. We found
Mm.
a swamp that, if he'd have been there another hour, he'd have got, he would have probably died of hypothermia. He was frozen stiff in the water when we found him.
Wow.
And the only reason we found him is because Chase found the track. The search and rescue was out there looking for this kid, and they were out there for 3 hours before we got there. It was snowing, and it snowed over the kid's footprints, and
Mhm.
he ended up scenting the footprint over the fresh snow and tracking, and we found the kid's missing shoe in the water, and we stopped there, and the drone flew over and found the kid about 30 yards away from us. So
Wow.
yeah, so I mean, I still love what I do with K9. So as of now, I do plan on continuing K9. I do plan on, as of now, doing another K9. We'll see what the next couple of years brings. Um, but I'm also still looking for that next thing as well. I'm keeping my mind open to opportunities. So
Well, that's, I think, is important. I don't think we're ever done, like I think this is the moment of time we're working within now, and we can be present in our lives and in our relationships and our careers, but there's always next things moving through us. And our job is to just keep staying open, open to the people, open to the opportunities, open to whatever is dropping in. So
yeah.
this has been cool. Like, I love that you shared your story, Joe. I love that you came on and just gifted your heart to us, because you could feel that from you. Like, you have such a great spirit. But where do you want to leave people? Like, what is like the thought to close out this episode that you want people to feel from you?
I guess I would say, you know, different experiences in life lead you to where you're at. Life happens, not life doesn't, life, why do things always happen to me? Life happens to me. It's not to you, it's for you, because of you. I always think that life happens for you because of the actions that you have taken in life. And there's ways you can handle situations. You can either pretty much push through these situations and grow from them and learn from them. Take your kicks when if you go down, take your kicks and get back up. Or you can stay down when life puts you down, and I leads you in a direction that that you're going to regret in the future. But it seems like everything happens to people, and I was asked the other day if I miss my parents and have any unsettled remorse from them passing, and it's like, no, I don't have any unsettled remorse from them passing. I'm sad that they're passed away. I'm sad that they never got to meet their grandkids. I'm sad that they never got to meet my wife. But because of them passing, I took the path that I took that led me to where I'm at today. If they wouldn't have passed away, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. I would have grown up a totally different lifestyle. Do I know that 100%? No, but I know that's a pretty good fact that I would not be where I'm at today. So I'm thankful for the time, the 12 years that I had with them. I miss them dearly almost every day. I think about them every day. And it's like, today is the second year of my uncle passing away. So I sent my aunt a text, thinking of you today. He was a great man. My daughter still talks of him. So I got to know him for a short time in her life, but she still talks about him and misses him. And, life happens for us because of how we react to it. So that's kind of what I want to go with.
Yeah, I love that. And I bet you your daughter probably he probably visits your house even though he's crossed over. I'm sure he's around.
I always say the cardinals are the angel birds. So if somebody watching over you, if a cardinal flies over, yeah, every time in the yard, she always says, "That's Uncle Gary," and relate to me a lot. I was going to bring this up, but her biological dad passed away a couple months ago. She's my stepdaughter. She was about a year old when I met my wife, and her dad got into drugs, and there were orders for protection in place. He was doing some things that were pretty threatening to my wife, and so we ended up getting order for protection. My stepdaughter, she never really saw him. He lived in Ohio. We lived in Minnesota. He came up a few times to see her, but over the last year, she didn't really get to see him because of his choices he was making with the drug use and just a danger to himself at the time and others. So he ended up passing away in a pretty bad motorcycle accident. And so she's going to pretty much grow up not really knowing her dad. She's going to have some core memories of him in the photos that we have. But I mean, she was only 5 when he passed away. So she's not going to have a whole lot of recollection of what he was like. And, the stuff that she does remember, obviously, and thankfully, is good memories. So, and that's what we're going to leave her with. We don't want her knowing, happened, but it's like I can relate to her a lot with her dad passing and my parents passing away when I was younger. So at least I'm able to help guide her and hopefully help get her through situations when she gets older. Situations that I recall, and I can help her. I'll be able to know kind of hopefully what she's going through at the time. So again, life happens to us. I got put in the position where I'm at with my wife and my stepdaughter and her dad passing away, maybe because my parents have passed away, and I'm able to help her through that. So
I really believe we go through things to teach from it. And although when we're going through the traumatic stuff, sometimes it's hard to swallow that. But if we look at it years later, we actually see that thread almost, where some people go through a traumatic experience and now they're in certain, non-for-profits helping others go through that experience and stuff. And it really, I believe it shapes us. And, if we talk about God, like I believe God has a mission for everybody, right? And it's like sometimes we don't see it when we're in the thick of all the shit storms that we're going through, but there's a reason that it's there.
Yep, just have to pretty much believe and trust, and like I said, push through. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, it's good. Joe, I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today to share your story. We'll obviously have all your contact details in the show notes. And if people are like, oh my God, I love that story, and they're inclined to even just chat with you about cool canine stuff, I know we have your Instagram handle and everything there. So we'll make sure to get that out into the world. But yeah, just thank you again for all the time. Appreciate it.
Great talking with you.
Yeah. And guys, we'll see you again in the next episode. See, I told you, right? Isn't he such a beautiful being? Like such a great heart. And you can feel it coming through. And I can feel like his desire to serve the world and his viewpoint about how certain things happen in our life for different reasons. And sometimes we don't understand them at that moment in time and how they're showing up and how that feels inside of that pain. But that was so powerful. Like, Joe, thank you so much for being on the episode, for being on the show, for sharing your heart with us. And for all of you guys listening, I'm just going to encourage you guys to share this out, send it to a friend, help us get the word out. This podcast happens because of all of us together. The Light Warriors Unleashed movement is that in a movement of us creating together. So I'm going to encourage you guys to share it out. We have a beautiful guest coming onto the show. We have amazing people stepping into the space. If you know somebody too that could be an amazing addition to the show, we would love to hear from you. You can send me a DM on Instagram. All the information's in the show notes. And let's move this movement forward. And again, thank you guys so much for being here. And I'm just so grateful to have you in my world and in my life.